Thank you, Michelle and Kyle. I am delighted to be here, and HCM is thrilled to have been chosen to support the strategic planning process and look forward and see what the future holds for the network. It's been fantastic to track the progress that the network has made over the last 5 years and hear Kyle's summary of everything that's happened and how the network has grown. We're thrilled to be part of this moment right now, and we're really looking forward to seeing what the future holds for the network. Before kicking things off, I want to make a point that today I won't just be speaking at you. We want this to be an open dialogue. So if at any point during my presentation you have a question, you have a thought, a reaction, anything, feel free to jump in, interrupt me. At any point. You can either speak up if you're so inclined, or if you are like me, where you are really not so keen on speaking up in front of a large group of people, you can feel free to jot down your ideas and share them on these cards with me, with Michelle, with Kyle, and I will pass these around so that if you do want to jot down your thoughts. And you want to share something after the fact, feel free to reach out to me by email at any time. That QR code over there, if you scan it, it'll give you my contact information. You can hold on to it if you want to do that. What's that? Closer to the mic. Okay. You may have to remind me to get closer to the mic again. So just a quick word about who HCM Strategist is. We're a higher education consulting firm with a national purview. We've worked across all 50 states. In 2023, we celebrated our 15th year. And we, in that time, we've developed expertise across several areas. So higher education finance, which accounts for about 60 to 65% of our work. Governance structures, research on credential value and quality, research on state investments in short-term and non-degree credentials, and then the topic of today, strategic planning. We are a fully remote company, so we've got our team spread out all across the country. I am based in Phoenix, Arizona, where it is very dry, very hot. It's already hit triple-digit temperatures, and we average about 7 inches of rain a year. So this chilly, wet day is a nice reprieve for me. As we've already mentioned, HCM is supporting the development of a new 3 to 5 year strategic plan to guide the network's growth and management over the next few years. We're going to focus on a few different things in that new plan. One is defining a growth path for the network moving forward. Also, executing priority changes to increase the capacity and sustainability of the network's footprint across the American higher education landscape. And then last but not least, probably one of the more important aspects of the strategic planning process will be looking at the financial stability and sustainability of the network moving forward. This will all result in a public-facing plan that you guys will all have access to. This is a question that came up in a survey that I'll go over the answers to in just a few moments. Members asked, where is the current plan? So you will get access to the plan that's in development. It will be public-facing. And in the interim, throughout this process, we will be reaching out to you guys for your feedback, your opinions, your thoughts. We've already started doing that. First step was that member survey, but we will continue to engage with you guys. And again, we welcome your thoughts. Don't be shy. So member survey that recently went out. I hope a lot of you guys saw the emails about them, about the survey that went out. Before we go into the responses, I want to pose some adapted questions from that survey to you guys here to get some of your reactions. So this is my first time doing a live poll thing, so we're going to see if this works out. It'll be an experiment. You can join at slido.com and entering that number, or you should be able to scan that QR code, I believe. So we'll give this a try. Let me know if you have any issues joining. Is the QR code working for people? No. Okay, so maybe go to the website. What's that? The website is working. Okay, perfect. All right, so the website is working. All right, I'm getting some thumbs up out there. Is there anyone still getting logged on? Do you want me to wait another minute? Okay. I see some people typing in, so I'll give it another quick second. All right. So first question, and it looks like it's not going to feed us the live responses, but it will log it into the system so I can provide a summary after the fact. Moving forward, what resources or services could the network begin to provide that it doesn't already provide that would be most helpful to, should say you, or the field? So what kind of resources would you like the network to begin providing? And given that the live responses are not showing up, if you guys want to, the poll is not coming up. Okay, so this experiment did not work out. But if you guys want to say aloud some of your responses and share them with the group, I can jot those down and we can have a discussion about them. Write them down on the card and share those around after the fact. Yeah. Yeah, if you could write the responses on the card so then we have that information to take back with us. But if anybody wants to share aloud, okay. Anybody else want to share out some resources? Yes. Okay, thank you. What other resources would you like to see the network provide you guys moving forward? Yes. And we'll get to that. And we will get to that in just a few seconds, more details on that.
Another thing I'd like to suggest you do is NCRN, so strength rather than something that the NCRN provides service on.
On that as well. That was a significant portion of the responses that we got in the member survey. So a lot more on that to come in just a quick second. I'm going to move on to the second question, but if you guys have any other ideas that you want to share out with the group, please do. But at the very least, please jot down your responses on the cards. Second question, what are some key ways that the network should evolve its strategies over the next 3 to 5 years? Please do.
Set a target at a period of 5 years and then work this backward. I don't need a mic. Thank you.
It's for the Zoom call.
Oh, further, okay. But to set a target and then work backward, it's really hard to think about evolving a strategy if you're going nowhere. A friend of mine at Lumina said, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. So you don't have a strategy until you know where you're going.
Any other thoughts on the evolution of strategy? Do you guys have any questions about the current set of strategies? Is that okay? Because this also was part of the responses to the survey, so I suspect there may be some questions about the current set of strategies. Okay, I'm kind of curious. What are some questions about the strategies other than maybe are you not familiar with the strategies? I see some nods, so. Any breaks I'm sure of. Well, we would appreciate if you jot down your thoughts again on those note cards in front of you, or contact us by email after the fact. We would love to hear your thoughts. If you have questions about anything about the strategies, about what the strategic plan even is, that's also critical information. So please feel free to reach out. And then our third and final non-live poll question, moving forward, would you guys be willing and able to pay a small registration fee of about $300 to $500 to attend this conference? I think Kyle said that the 2025 one is already covered, so presumably this will begin in 2026, but would you guys be able to and be willing to pay something of around $300 to $500 registration fee for this conference? Yeah, show of hands, who would be willing? Yes. I see. Yes. Okay.
Willing to get down to the value proposition that these network sets up and the future goal to make the continued participation worthwhile both to the network and the participants. So, but they're already happening.
All right, so then what would make that, what makes this event valuable to you? What would make it worth it to pay the willingness piece? What would make you willing to continue? What's critical about what this conference provides to you? Yeah.
I think the intimacy of this group is really meaningful, and then also the wide array of organizations that are represented here today helps with making that intimacy more valuable.
Saw your hand go up first.
It's actually just a question, just to clarify, it's just the conference, not other webinars and other services or knowledge products that you share throughout the year.
Kyle, do you want to?
I would say, yes, I would say we're talking about the conference
I would just add that in the last year or two, maybe this is a result of post-COVID, there's been a lot more development of consortia or networks with special foci, whatever. And I do feel like the groups are going to have to decide. I see more and more people don't have huge travel budgets or they don't want to travel for all the reasons why, people's time. So I feel like this is going to be an issue of the future is how many networks or consortia should you belong to? How many meetings should you go to? What do you do when there's overlap? And I feel like this is going to hit the NCRN along with others. And research and having quality information, particularly in an AI chatbot age, is going to be something we're all going to have to deal with. So I would just put that on the table for, it's a bigger discussion, obviously, than I think you're probably going to.
That's very helpful. To piggyback off of that question before I get to your response, are there any other groups or conferences that might, that you could think of that might be good for collaboration as well? Kale.
You know, natural resident people are going to be interested in this issue and state and all.
Mhm.
So figuring out ways and get here and talk to the states.
Mhm. All right, now your question.
So I agree with the comment about the intimacy of the group being an important piece of this. I think being able to make those direct connections, I think in those larger conferences, you can find all the people if you already know them. And you can meet new people, but it's much harder to be intentional about meeting new people who you don't know who are also interested in your space. And I will say the other thing is in this conference, one of the things that I find unique is everyone's coming with a fair amount of background knowledge, even if it's from different areas, so we can dig into the weeds. That is not the case at many other conferences that we attend. And so I feel for the research piece, this is the very unique element is you can actually have more in-depth conversations. You're not sort of doing a background layout for the first part of your piece.
Any other thoughts on the willingness or ability to pay a registration fee? Any other thoughts occur to you? Interrupt me. And again, write your thoughts down and feel free to share those with us.
Our
after.
time.
Oh.
Wow, that's loud.
Yeah, I would say, let's also consider like whether you are trying to expand, you know, how many people are involved in this or not, because if you're trying to expand it, then there may be some people from smaller groups who are not gonna be able to cover that. So It just depends whether you want to keep it small and, you
Mhm.
know, to the groups that can afford that, or if you're trying to expand, then bring in more smaller groups and researchers.
Alright. All right, and I reserve time for open discussion, thinking that the live poll would actually work. But if there are any other final thoughts on these three questions before I dive into the sort of high-level takeaways from the survey responses, we can go and take a quick second to see. All right, so let's dive into those, the survey responses. So the survey ran for about 2 weeks from mid-February to the beginning of March. There were 33 total responses. 360 of you opened the email. 216 of you clicked through the survey, and only 33 responded. Every single person opened the email. There were 0 unopened emails about the survey. So I know that you guys all saw them. So if any brave souls who didn't complete the survey, want to share any reasons why, if it seemed too long, or if you just didn't have time, or lack of interest, whatever the case may have been, we'd be very interested to hear. But among the 33 responses that we did get, they were incredibly high quality responses. So we were able to get a lot of really great information from them. So if you were one of the 33 people who responded, thank you very much. You guys really to share a lot of very helpful information. One of the first questions that we asked was about overall satisfaction with the network. Overwhelmingly, people are satisfied with the network. 85% responded yes. 15% said no, and didn't really provide much of a reason. If you fall into this 15% group, whether you were one of those 5 respondents or not, and would like to share, what your dissatisfaction may be, we would be very appreciative of that. And likewise, if you are among the 85% who are satisfied with the network, we'd also appreciate hearing what about the network you're satisfied with. What makes you satisfied with the network? A few key themes emerged from the responses, and some of these have already come up in the room today, which is exactly why we had those questions, to see if kind of some of the same issues came up, and sure enough, they have. One is that relationship building element, that intimacy of the group that's come up already a couple of times. And we'll dive into these one by one in just a second. So I'll kind of gloss over these themes right now. The other is resource and research sharing. This was probably the second most discussed theme among the responses. Third, another one that's already come up is greater policy engagement. Fourth is enhanced internal and external communications. And then fifth is that financial sustainability piece, and kind of some fundraising opportunities moving forward. So diving into key area number 1, and there's going to be a lot of text, but I'll talk to you guys through. First thing, and by far, important purpose for the network, as expressed by the survey respondent, was this relationship building piece, getting to connect with other individuals who have similar research interests, basically sitting in this room with other people who are nerds about non-degree credentials. You guys really, really value this. And a few people said just being in the same room as other researchers in this space, and knowing that there are other people in this space, that alone is incredibly valuable. So, again, some of this, the intimacy of the group, and we're really getting to connect with the folks in this room. The respondents indicated that you guys benefit both from the virtual convenings, the webinars, as well as in-person events like this one. And the value of both seems to be pretty equal. And then the knowledge sharing piece as well, not just the relationship building, but getting to learn, like you guys will with the subsequent panels later today. One respondent referred to the network as a pulse check, and a valuable opportunity to see where the field is, gauge where it's going, and just kind of understand where you sit in the field. A couple of suggestions that members made in response to the survey questions around this. There was a suggestion of expanding the array of webinars and expanding the in-person gatherings as well, to foster greater networking within this community. And one suggestion was to hold more mixers, more kind of casual events where you guys can get to know each other on a more personal level rather than just just on a professional basis. There was another suggestion for more events throughout the year. One person suggested or stated that it was a bit difficult to come to DC. I think they must have been a West Coast based person. So hiking all the way to DC was a bit of a challenge, but that they would also appreciate throughout the year interim regional events where you guys can connect with other researchers on a more local basis. And then the suggestion of integrating more activities that, again, foster more personal connection within the network's offering of professional learning opportunities. So taking an event like this and maybe building in an optional event where you guys can connect on a more personal basis. I'll pause there because I know this topic has already come up a couple of times. Does this resonate with you guys here in this room? Yes, I see several nodding heads. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mine's really petty more than anything, but in the past meetings that we've had, we've had the list of who's in the room, and that gives me a sense of who is in this room. This one, I don't really know as much as who's in the room, except for the speakers and my table here. And in order for me to kind of deepen relationship and not be weird and awkward and creepy, I think that's going to be helpful. Just dealing with the basics of this, just so I can see, oh, I met that person before. Oh, that person's over there. And my good friend Melanie from ACRO is here. And I said, oh, Melanie's here. And it's like, oh, there were people I'm surprised that, that I could have connected with earlier, whatever. It's just the real basics in terms of strengthening the network. And,
No, and I think with a group of this size, that it's fairly simple to share out a list as long as when you get to larger convenings, you do see that happening with apps where you can volunteer to share your information and let others know that you'll be in attendance. That's a great suggestion. Thank you.
also, who's in the network too?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, we see that list every so often, but is it business and industry? Is it nonprofits? Is it universities? And just what we're doing. Who are those people that are part of this group?
Thank you for that. All right. The second theme that emerged was around resource and research sharing. This was a very close second in terms of what you guys see as the most important purpose of the network. And one of the suggestions that came up among several respondents, it came up several times, was the request for the development of an online resource hub that's fairly comprehensive, that includes things like a user-friendly database of existing research on non-degree credentials, to be able to track the evolution of that knowledge. A set of very easily digestible resources, potentially for a non-research audience, playbooks, fact sheets, things that you guys could use in potentially speaking to policymakers or other non-researchers. And then a document that summarizes our current understanding of non-degree credentials, and the network crowdsourcing what is needed in the field from you guys. Any thoughts about any of this? I see some more nodding heads. Any thoughts around this, or what sort of additional resources or what type of resources?
It would also be helpful to include any kind of service or data sets that cover it, that are known.
And I would add that it's kind of the mission of the Learner Ecosystem Library to do some of that. So I would, and we just put up, and I'm going to talk just for a few minutes this afternoon, but we have a new researcher showcase, and several of the rooms are open, but the one room that is not, there's no content there, and I wanted to come here and talk with you all, is because we need to figure out how to build the researcher room where what is the most useful research that can be applied that folks coming to the library can use. And we're talking about students, maybe graduate students especially, who need to learn about the learner ecosystem and have a way to access reports. They can go to a lot of your websites. They don't know what report to open. They don't have it synthesized. And and I don't want to steal the thunder from this afternoon, but our AI chatbot library assistant is coming live maybe in another week or two. And the reason why we're investing in this is so that people can synthesize information and pull information from the library, but we hope from other sites as well. So this is a question I want to raise with folks this afternoon, but we're really trying to work with ACRO and a number of other groups to pull together the best, I don't know, whatever evidence-based information, knowing that this is going to be a challenge for us to share information. So I just want everyone to know that the library is sort of on this. We're not the only ones, of course, and that's part of the problem, is that there is no one place. And the website, some of them you have paywalls now. That's making it really hard for students to find certain reports or information. And like, research probably shouldn't be sitting behind paywalls, useful information. So I do feel like this is something that would be really helpful to talk as a group about. So just hopefully we'll later maybe talk about the library.
All right. The third theme, and this came up a lot in the survey responses, was a call to really enter the policy space, because the network has not really engaged a lot with policymakers. And so a request to explore strategies to enhance the network's ability to inform policy and engage more deeply with policymakers. Um, there was a call to strengthen relationship with non-academic players and to produce more policy relevant work. To mobilize members to address the lack of to produce more presentations, webinars that showcase a stronger link between non-academic and other policy areas, other policy concerns. For the network to more actively promote members' research to policymakers, and some of these resources that we've talked about that respondents called for might make that a little bit easier. But we'd appreciate your thoughts there on how, if you do want your work to be promoted more among policymakers, what that might look like and how you might want that seen done. And then for the network to provide more thought leadership as well. And in particular, to broker a discussion on standards around quality and establish some promising practices, kind of a standard set of promising practices that you guys can agree on. One thing that I should note is that the network is not currently allowed to do any sort of advocacy work around specific policies under the terms of its Lumina grant, which explains a lot of why the network has not been so deeply engaged in the policy space. But because this came up so much in the survey, I wanted to make sure to bring this up here, and we would love to hear your thoughts. It's already come up once or twice. So would love to hear how this resonates with you. Would you like your work promoted more among policymakers? Would you like to establish a stronger relationship among policymakers? You know, given the limitations of the network, you know, how does this sit with you? How do you feel about this? What are your thoughts? You look like you.
Going on the Hill that's going to directly impact this space in very large ways. It's a wonderful space to have a webinar about, a wonderful space. Legislation. So is that so I think I wouldn't be so scared about advocacy, but then I'm not a lawyer.
So that is also my understanding. I will confirm with Michelle and Kyle, and not to put Kermit with Lumina on the spot, how advocacy would be defined if doing a webinar or presentation on a particular policy area, if that crosses the line or if that's permissible within the bounds of your grant. I don't know the terms of the grant.
Where do you want me to talk?
Lumen is a little more careful.
So to get a little bit more specific, suppose NCRN put on a webinar in which the attendees want to lobby, but NCRN is not telling them how to lobby. They just want to be more informed about short-term Pell. And NCRN is not taking a position. They want a informational webinar so they can go on the Hill to lobby more informed, but NCRN is not directing them. Is that okay? Correct.
I just want to put in my 2 cents, I think, which is that what's unique about the NCRN, in my view, is that it is a research group. And so we have identities as researchers that also tell us what is okay to say and what's not okay to say in terms of the data, right? So we should all be coming back to the data and the evidence. So I feel like that should also be the guiding force that tells us when we're slipping into advocacy versus being researchers talking about the data and the evidence. I think we should be free to do that. So that's,
We've got 3 hands up, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so during the course of me holding this mic, most of the points have been made, but and I'm probably biased because I work in the policy space, but just want to underscore that a lot of what even nonprofit policy organizations do is not actually lobbying. As Kermit said, there's a lot of specificity around what constitutes that. And I think the information sharing, the research base, that's really important because this is still a space where there's not a ton of long-term evidence-based practices. So I think figuring out how to share that and avoid the lobbying label is a space this group should get into, in my opinion.
I would encourage the group to partner with, I think doing exactly what your strength is, which is the research piece, which is desperately needed. I think the space is moving unbelievably fast, faster than any one of us can keep up with. And so having someone solely focused on the research who can provide excellent information to those of us who do have advocacy arms, I think might be the most effective use of resources. We're hungry for your data and we would love to have it.
And then I defer to Lumina's interpretation of advocacy, but something else that we've done with organizations that don't want to officially advocate, that do want to provide their expertise, is you all could consider looking for opportunities to respond to official requests for information, either from congressional committees or from the Department of Education, because generally when the government asks for information from experts and requests that publicly, it isn't always considered advocacy. But again, I defer to Lumina's interpretation of that.
I want to make a clarification regarding the ability of nonprofits to lobby. Nonprofits are allowed to lobby. They cannot lobby more than 20% of their effort, or more than 20% of their effort cannot be devoted to lobbying, but IRS will not revoke your nonprofit status if you lobby. Now, it's a separate question. Does Lumina, the grant terms allow NCRN to lobby? It sounds like no, but NCRN members who are nonprofits are allowed to lobby under IRS rules as long as it's not your main business and activity.
I've been given the 10-minute warning and I want to make sure that we get through all of this. So I hate to cut you guys off, but feel free to continue sharing your thoughts on this topic. The internal external communications piece, in terms of internal communications, really kind of a refresher on what the network is, what the strategic priorities are, what the purpose is, what does it mean to be a member? If you're signed up for the emails, are you a member? Kind of, those basic things, which helps explain some of Kyle's level setting today. And the network will continue to provide more of that, especially as the network continues to grow and take on new members. It would be helpful to provide some of that basic information. In terms of external communications, in addition to some of the communications and resources with policymakers, there are a couple of additional ideas. One is the idea to launch a blog series in which you guys would be contributors. Another is to launch a peer-reviewed journal. In the survey, there were very mixed responses to this. About half of the people said that it would be helpful to have one. The other half said it would not be helpful. Half said that there was already an oversaturation of journals, and then the other half said that there are not enough journals at all. So so that the responses to this one weren't particularly helpful. But if you have thoughts, if you have strong feelings, the journal question in particular seemed to elicit strong feelings on both sides. So if you have strong feelings, either way, please do let us know. This is a question that the network is considering. And I certainly don't want to shortchange us on this topic, but looking forward and the financial sustainability of the network, we'll take into consideration 3 different things. One is funding to maintain current activities, continue hosting the webinars throughout the year, continue hosting this particular event. We want to make sure that that continues. Then funding to potentially expand to new areas, sort of some of the policy work, some of the research collaboration that, again, has already come up. And then looking into expanded funding models or funding mechanisms as well. So to maintain current activities, be able to continue holding this conference, need to find a funding model to support it, either additional foundation funding or potentially shifting to a membership model where you guys do pay a small registration fee, as has already come up. And I should preface all of this by saying that these are just ideas that are being floated around. There's nothing, they're based, it's a giant question mark. So throwing these ideas that are being floated around, and would appreciate, your thoughts on in any and all of this, any sort of partnerships, any sort of ideas on sources for funding, that sort of thing. Expanding to new areas, again, that connection, connecting that research to policy and to practice. Some of the activities that are being considered are professional development opportunities. Writing for a policy audience is different than writing for a research audience. So an opportunity to learn about that. The network as a connector, as a matchmaker, and providing potentially a member. When members are listed by area of expertise, so you guys blogs and other external forms of communications, micro grants and partnerships with other organizations, that again has already come up. Research efforts among network members, and something similar to what came up about answering calls for research, but potentially with also philanthropic organizations. These organizations often have a strong interest in the area, but they lack the expertise on staff. And so there could be the possibility of members providing your expertise, what's so valuable to them, for a small fee. A potential rebranding, potentially expanding the focus or refocusing on workforce and skills, maybe expanding the scope of the network, developing a strategy to attract more new members, or would the network prefer to maintain or strengthen the current brand as it currently is? Some potential funding models or mechanisms to achieve sustainability. There are the donor client fundraising opportunities, submitting unsolicited proposals for some additional funding to maintain continued operations of things as they are. Again, this conference being a major piece of that operations. And then aligning with existing efforts in the field to develop projects and work on a project by project basis. Again, the membership model, potentially shifting to that. Having sponsorships, I think we've seen some of sponsorships at conferences that we attend, the different levels of sponsorships. So that's an idea that's been floated around. We've already talked about possibly paying for membership with certain services and benefits coming from that. And then, and we've already talked about some of the fee-for-service work. So got a couple of questions down at the bottom for consideration. Would appreciate your thoughts. At this point, I will turn it over to Michelle and Kyle if you want to share any additional thoughts about what you guys have been thinking about and how you look at the future. I know we're coming to time.
I probably don't want to add too much at this point because we are getting close to time here, but I think we would love to get any feedback from you all here on this sort of like future looking direction for the NCRN, you know, particularly thinking about sort of different models where maybe it is combined, you know, grant funded as well as membership, a membership model. There's some ideas about how we can transition to that if that's something that's feasible, but I'm sure there's a lot of collective knowledge in this room. So I'd be really curious to hear ideas from folks that are here, and maybe Kyle has some other things to add, but
No, I would echo that, that I think this is, I mean, really the purpose of this session is to listen and learn more about where to kind of do that pulse check back to the member, back to our members. And I will just say on that question of are people members, am I a member? If you're in this room, I would say the answer is yes. Um, uh, we've been using the term member to refer to pretty much anybody on our mailing list for the last, really since COVID. At one time, very early in the NCRN, we had an idea, like I said, that we were more handpicked, and Steve and I may have even done some interviews of people who tried to approach us in 2019 to see if they were non-degree enough focused in their research. But at this point, pretty much everybody, all 430 or so individuals on our email contact list, we would consider to be members. Jeff?
One thing about models moving forward, Michelle and Kyle, is that you've got an endogeneity problem. So if you stay like you are, $300 to $500 pays for what you're doing. Everybody give us cash, pay for reception. So you can fund that, but if you expand your services, then you have a whole new budget. So then you have to have a whole new model, but then you have to come up with a different funding model and change what you do. And so I think you really need to set the direction that you see the NCRN going, take that mantle of leadership and help come up with some ideas like where do you think that the network should go? Then you know how much it's going to cost. Then you can come up with a funding model that can kind of meet that, because you're not going to expand on $300 to $500 per person with this size of a group, and you're getting nowhere. So, I mean, other than having this wonderful conference, of course, but you wouldn't expand.
I will say that I think that one area that came up in the last slide that was really important that I would like some feedback today on is this non-degree credentials topic too limiting? Do people in this room consider themselves do people consider non-degree to be just one small piece perhaps of their organization's overall research portfolio? And if so, would people see value? Because I think when I think about where, if we wanted to grow, if we wanted to have just draw more people in, one way to do that would be to just, you know, consider a wider array of topics in our meetings. That would be one way to go. And I'm kind of curious to hear if people think that that is something that, if people are uncomfortable with the risk of losing that tight focus that we have right now in non-degree credentials, or if people would see value in kind of exploring synergies with other related topics like skills, like workforce development, workforce policy, and so on.
I mean, I think a good source for your answer would be in your mission, right? Because as we all know, there's always that risk of following the money instead of your mission. And so sometimes we end up developing these cost structures that we have to sustain. So we get engaged with work and projects just to bring in the funding, but they do take us away from the mission. So I guess the central question is, what exactly is your mission at this point? And then how do you support the things that are central to that mission?
Like very, very full cards of ideas.
Yeah.
Maybe react to that question. I think that's a foundational one about mission. I mean,
Yeah.
but anything like thoughts, we need ideas, thoughts, write them on the cards, email us later. You know, we want to hear from everybody.
Yeah, I think I've always been trained to wait 30 seconds and let the silence build and let the suspense build. But I think we can continue the conversation now going into maybe a 15-minute break while we get ready for our next set of panels. Stephanie, thank you so much. This has been extremely helpful.
Thank you, Stephanie.